Okay, here we go then. The last race of the day. It's all to play for. Race 2. It all comes down to the next 14 laps. And away they go. Now, and there's Darren spinning out as well. Darren, there's contact there. Push Kieran wide. Oh, but he's gone off. What's going on? Shane's also there in the BMW. Oh, nearly loses it. Kieran's going to have to slow down. No, he's gone too much. It's Josh here, and he is leading. This is fantastic for Josh. Oh, a bit of a luck tap. And Josh, oh my God, who's going to take it? I think it's Darren. I think it's going to be Rob. Rob gets it. He's actually on the grass. This isn't good for Tom. And he's made the move. Look at that. Through Eau Rouge. Oh, that's Mike. Mike's gone off. Oh, Craig sideways, big time. Is it going to be enough? No, Sam takes it and takes the title ahead of Tom. We are here then for race 3, the final race of the FeckWrest Season 2. There has been 10 rounds and 30 races, and it comes down to the final race here. In the overall driver's title, Craig Kellett is the champion and has already been decided. Tom is currently second with 363. Darren only obviously a point behind, but he's not here for Brands. With Josh fourth with 323. Mike is fifth, 320. These positions are all up for grabs, and they could change for the final race here. In the teams, there will be no change. Ellett with 897 and K-Tech 769, Parker 667. So that has already been decided, and there will be no change there. In the independents then, this is the big one, the one that we'll watch for the final here, as this could be one of 3 drivers between Mark, Nichol, Josh Hardy and Mike Kuipers. Mark is currently leading, so it's his to lose with 447, Mike 433 and Josh only 4 points behind with 429. Of course, double points here at Brands, which means it could go any way. So let's find out what happens, and let's have a look at the grid for the final race. Here is your final grid of the season here at Brands Hatch. Stephen Heath is on the front row of the grid with his Subaru WRX next to Mark Nichol in their Renault Megane. Row 2, we've got Rob Ellett in the first of the Nissan GTRs for Ellett Racing next to Mike Kuipers in his Nissan GTR. Row 3 is Tom Foster in the K-Tech Racing Subaru WRX next to Craig Kellett in the Nissan GTR of Ellett Racing. Row 4, of course, is Joe Burrows in his Mazda Tenza and Josh Hardy in the Renault Megane, and the back row of the grid, of course, is Kieran Thomas in a K-Tech Subaru WRX after his win in race 2. Well, here we are again. It's the last race of season 2 of the FeckWrest Touring Cars. We are here to sort out the independence title between Josh, Mike and Mark, and away they go. It's a good start from Stephen and a pretty poor start from the Renault Megane, bogging down of Mark Nichol. But everyone is on the track, and that's Josh Hardy running a little bit wide there. So everyone follows suit with there's Mark who's on the grass, so he needs to get back on the track, and it actually doesn't, and he's actually spun himself out way wide, and that's our current independent title leader. Mark Nichol is right down to the back of the grid, so he could almost have lost it already in the first few corners. There's Rob Ellett who's on the inside of Stephen, so this is a fight already starting. So Mike just behind these two, and there's Craig, so Craig pushes his Mike out of the way, and the 2 Ellett Racing Nissan GTRs are in the podium position. That's Stephen Heath, so Stephen runs wide, so does Kieran, and that's Rob running wide as well, so it's all kicking off here as a push there by Craig. So Stephen back ahead in the lead. A chaotic first lap then. We continue on to lap 2. And at the moment it is advantage to Mike Kuipers, who is currently leading out of the independents. Whether this means he's going to be taking the title in this position, we don't know, but Mark isn't looking very safe at the moment. We don't often see the Ellett Racing cars together at the start of a race. We've said this before, with two very, very different strategies, but if these two get a double podium, that would be good. But unfortunately, commentator's curse says Rob off again. He did that in race 1. So Rob is down, much further down the grid now, and out the question for the running of the lead of this race, unfortunately. So on board with Kieran, Tom ahead in third, just behind Craig, who's just behind Stephen in the lead. And behind him, it's Josh. So Josh has somehow got past Mike. So this is developing very quickly here. As you can see, there's Josh. And there is Craig, and he pushes Stephen wide, and it looks like he's going to take the lead. There's Mike running wide on the grass. So it could be Mike going off. No, he doesn't. He gets himself back on the track. Look at this. It is so close between these front runners here. The top 5 are pushing and pushing for the lead. Craig could get ahead now. He's managed to get away from Stephen, and no doubt that Craig is going to push to make that gap bigger. And there is Josh Hardy and a very robust move to push Kieran out of the way, and another one against Tom as well. So here is Josh. A nudge against Tom. Another nudge there. Whoa, nearly loses it. So Josh is in between a K-Tech Subaru sandwich here. Josh gets ahead of Tom, and Tom nearly goes into Kieran there. So the two Subarus are together as well. On board with Kieran. So Josh up to third now. So this means that he's put himself in the best position to try and snatch that title away from Mark at the last race here. So Mike is down in 6th behind the two Subarus, so he needs to get past them. And here is Mark Nichol down in 9th, and he's got Rob ahead of him. So this is not looking good for Mark at the moment, and he's got the biggest mountain to climb if he's going to maintain that lead and take the title. He needs to get his head down and just keep his cool. So on board with Joe here, and Joe is behind Mike. Mike's got a bit of work to do as well, so he's behind the first K-Tech of Tom. It looks like he's going to go on the outside. Oh, Tom nearly running wide. And that looks like Josh is going to go past Stephen Heath. So let's have a look at that. He's nearly got him. So on board with Josh. He's got a good run in on him here, and he's on the outside, and it looks like whoa, that was a bit of a push there, so I'm not quite sure what happened. So Heath goes down into 3rd, and Joe takes a nice slight diversion off into the gravel, but doesn't slow him down too much. So Mike still struggling here to get past the two Subarus of Tom and Kieran. Kieran goes a bit wider onto the grass. And this is really slowing Mike up, because essentially what he wants to do is keep on top of and keep up with Josh, and that's not happening at the moment. So that's Heath. Heath's gone off slightly again. Rob, unfortunately, he is having to make up for the mistake he made earlier. And there is Mark. So his first one is to get past Rob, and that can help. Every point counts, so don't give up, Mark. It's not quite over yet. As you can see, it's a hell of a long way to go. We're only on lap 5, coming to finish lap 5 of 14, going on to 6. So Craig, our championship winner, is comfortably leading, and he's not had enough wins, so he's going to take another one, it looks like, unless Josh can do something about it. So Kieran down to 7th now. Something's happened here. Kieran's down to 7th. We've got Joe up to 6th. Tom is 5th, and Mike is now 4th. So Mike has got past. So something must have happened. So essentially what Mike now needs to do is catch up with Josh, but he's got to get past Stephen Heath first, and Heathy is still behind Josh. Josh isn't getting away from here, so nor is he catching up really with Craig just yet. There's only 9 cars in this, as Gary was unable to start the race, and Harry decided that his issues were too much for the final and decided to sit it out. And that's Stephen Heath spins out. Heathy is in the gravel. It's a disaster for Heathy, who was doing really well after having a disastrous race too, so that's not helped. He's gone down from 3rd all the way down to 7th, so his misery continues. But he could make up for that in the next few laps, as he's not too far behind Joe. So let's watch on board with Heathy as he makes a mistake here. Look, just way too quick at the top end of the corner and into the gravel. Not the worst outcome. Mark's still struggling here, and he's still got a lot of work to do, and those laps are counting down, so it's getting closer and closer to Mark losing the title in the last race. Rob's obviously caught up with Stephen. This is potential for Rob to make up some positions. So Kieran and Tom still together, and Tom now still behind Mike, and Mike of course is behind Josh. So this has boiled down to literally the last few laps of it being Mike in 3rd and Josh in 2nd, and if things stay as they are with Mark finishing much further down, it will literally come down to whether Mike finishes ahead of Josh or whether Josh finishes ahead of Mike, as it's a 4-point difference, and on count back Josh will have had the most wins if it comes down to it. So we're on lap 8, ever closer to the decider here, and someone has spun. That's Stephen Heath again. So Heathy really struggling. Let's have a little find out what happened to Heathy here. So this means that Mark Nichol is now up to 8th position. It's 1 position, but it's 1 further than what it was before, so he can continue his journey into salvaging the damage and see if he can just keep a hold of the title by the skin of his teeth. He's got Rob still ahead of him, but Rob has now caught up with Joe. So Rob and Joe are having a bit of a tussle here, and that's Mike off on the grass, and it looks like Mike is catching Josh. Sorry, not a huge amount, but there or thereabouts, and we're on to lap 9. So the laps are running out now for pretty much Mike and for Mark, and at the moment it's looking like it's going to be Josh who's going to take the title, but as we know, anything could change. Craig goes round to put himself onto lap 10 of 14, and this will be a nice way for Craig to finish comfortably in the lead. He's already got the title in the bag, and to get another win under his name will be great, and he can really start to enjoy these final few laps. No pressure, no intensity, as he can look forward to season 3 and even start making plans. So Josh is still ahead of Mike, and this unfortunately has yet to be decided. So these two and Mark are under immense pressure now, and you can imagine how it must feel for them, as it's all literally boiled down to this last race and the last few laps. And it feels like Mike is catching, but it's very, very slow progress. There's Tom in 4th, who's out of question and not part of this race. Kieran nearly losing it on the grass. There is Rob, who's got ahead of Joe. So Mark now still in 8th. And could potentially still take the title if he stays and on the track and makes more progress. So there's Joe, who's now behind Kieran. Something's happened with Kieran. On to lap 11. 4 laps left. Kieran hits the gravel. Kieran's really struggling now. So, can you believe this? Mike is on the back end of Josh. Look how much closer he is. So, this is really developing into something extraordinary. And it looks like Josh was just on the grass with 2 wheels there, so he's playing a dangerous game. On board again with Mike, and Josh, look, he is sideways, so this has allowed Mike to get behind. So Mike could overtake here and take seconds, but he's not able to do it. So he's going to wait patiently, wait for the right moment. So literally it's gone down from Josh having quite a gap to nothing now, and this is literally down to these two, unless Mark can do something from being behind. And it looks like Mike is the faster of the two here, and Josh is defending hard, very, very hard. He's gone from driving facing forwards to driving looking behind him, looking at every move that Mike is making to see if he can defend. And you can see how much slower he is around those corners, not letting Mike through with a gap. But Mike is literally just behind him. He's got the slipstream, so he could potentially find the place to overtake. There's Tom on the grass, and this battle is still going. So they are now literally coming down to the last 2 laps as they come round the final bend and go on to lap 13 or 14. 2 laps to go for these two and for Mark to decide what happens. And let's keep an eye on Mark, because I think Mark has actually so Mark's got past Joe, so that's progress for Mark, and Mark is now up to 7th, so this is increasing his chances. I think he could still take it if he stays in 7th, so this is definitely changing now. With Mark being down at the back of the grid, it doesn't look like it's the position he really wants to be to take the title, but I think it's still possible. Further up is Kieran and Rob. There's Tom on his own, but this fight between Mike and Josh is still going on, so there's it's getting a bit pushy and shovey now. So literally you couldn't make it up. As we know, it still could change. Josh is currently leading. Mike is just behind him in this particular battle. And of course, Mark is still down in 7th. We think Mark is able to take it, but we're not entirely sure just yet. So, on to the final lap they go. And Mike is super close to Josh now. And this is interesting because there's a blue flag out for Stephen Heath, who has had a horrendous time on the track, and now he is adding to the equation, and he's put a spanner in the works for Josh. Is Stephen going to get out of the way? Because he should, but at the moment it's not looking like it's happening. Yeah, no, he's not out of the way yet. Oh, and the guys have ended up pushing him out of the way. So Mark is up to 6th. So what's going on? So Joe and Kieran. So Kieran's dropped down. So something's happened to Kieran. So Mark is up to 6th. So this looks like it's going to be Mark Nichols to take, because I don't think it matters between these two anymore. But they're still fighting between the two. However, this is Craig Kellett. He comes around on the final lap of the final race. Craig Kellett is your Season 2 FeckWrest champion. And that's Josh Hardy. So Josh is off the track. Mike is now in 2nd, and it's all literally boiled over. But it doesn't matter, because Mike finishes 2nd. Josh is going to finish 3rd, just ahead of Tom. But ultimately, Rob is 5th. And Mark Nichol is 6th, which means he's the independent champion for Season 2. Mark Nichol just about gets the title for the independents. Kieran takes 7th and Joe takes 8th. So let's find out what really happened here on the final lap between Mike and Josh. There's contact there. Mike pushes off Josh, unfortunately. On board with Mike then as we watch him and Josh go around the last few bends. But yeah, look, Josh does weave, and then it looks like Josh has put his brakes on a bit too early. On board with Josh. So you see there's the weaving, and there. Yeah, it's a bit difficult, as I say. The race stewards are going to look at that. So let's have a watch and find out what happened with Kieran, because we never really found out exactly how Kieran fell behind Mark, which was quite an important part in the title. So he actually went off on the gravel just way too quick, and then it looks like he struggled to get back on the track, and then he set the tyre wall, look. So Craig Kellett takes a win on his last ever race in the Season 2, and he takes the overall driver's title for the FeckWrest Season 2 Touring Car Online Championship. Craig finishes just ahead of Mike, which is a controversial finish between him and Josh in third, Tom just behind in fourth, Rob takes fifth, and of course Mark took sixth in the end after making up some spaces where others dropped out, and of course that takes him to the Independence Championship title as well. Kieran takes seventh, Joe takes eighth, Stephen takes ninth, and of course Harry and Gary both didn't start the race. So what that meant for the finishing positions then for the title, for the last of the FeckWrest races, 554 Craig finished on, just ahead of Tom, who was on 389. Darren stuck with third and managed to still take it ahead of Mike, who took fourth. Josh took fifth, 353. Mark took sixth. Seventh was Kieran in the end, 279. Rob was 271 and eighth. Stephen was ninth, 259. 10th was Sam, 240. Joe was 11th, 222. Harry is 12th with 159. Gary, 13th, 124. Of course, Chris and James don't score any more, so 28 and 27. Of course, we have to say that Sam gives the title away after winning season 1. So a 10th for Sam at this season was probably disappointing, but Sam was unfortunate not to be able to commit to all the races. In the teams, Ellett Racing, both Rob Kellett and Craig Ellett take the team's title in the Nissan GTR, so well done to those with 967. K-Tech takes second with 831, and Parker take third after not appearing at Brands with 667. In the independents then, of course, Mark takes the title with 477. Mike was second with 473, so it is literally 4 points in it. Josh quite a bit further down with third, 465. Of course, it was controversial, so it could be reviewed and changed at the last minute. Stephen, a good fourth in the end, 379. Joe goes up to fifth, 324, ahead of Harry after his issues, 259. Gary with 198. And then Chris and James are 8th and 9th, 57 and 34. Thank you very much for joining us for the whole of this season and for the final here at Brands. We will see you at season 3, but for now let's celebrate your title champions. So Craig Kellett is the season 2 champion, and of course in the teams, Ellett Racing win with the Nissan GTR, and of course the independent champion is Mark Nichol in his Renault Megane. We will be back very soon with season 3, a slight change of regulations, some new cars, new teams, new drivers, no doubt. But until then, we'll see you on the media day at Monza in a few weeks' time. Thank you very much.